When you drove on your way to work, you probably passed one of these. This is the Volvo XC40 and it's massively popular, but is it worth buying? Now the car you see here was quietly updated in 2023 to include a few more modern amenities, but to be honest, it's largely the same car that's been out for a long time. It won a bunch of different awards, and this platform was shared with Geely and Lynk & Co for a bunch of different other SUVs, but here it's being used for the XC40. This thing saw a bunch of different engines and drivetrains and even different transmissions. This thing saw plug-in hybrid variants, it had a twin charge motor at one point, but now it has a more simple 4-cylinder turbocharged mild hybrid engine, and it also can come as an electric version or even a coupe electric version known as the EX40 and the EC40. But let's talk price. This thing priced about $54,000 here in Australia before on roads, but this one here is called the XC40 Ultimate B4 Dark, which means this thing is priced from $62,990, but this thing has a few options on it, including a panoramic sunroof, a Harman Kardon premium sound system, which will cost you $2,700. It also has tinted rear windows for $800, and this exterior color, which is known as Silver Dawn, will cost you $1,200. That brings the total price of our test car here to just over $67,000 before on-road costs. Now you can tell this is a petrol XC40 because it has a functional grille here, which is blacked out, which looks really nice in contrast with this giant Volvo badge. You've even got these Thor Hammer LED lights, which will look great, and they corner with you as you turn, and you have some fog lights down below. Underneath this squishy cover is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol motor, which produces 145 kilowatts and 300 newton-meters of torque, which means when paired up to this 8-speed gearbox and all-wheel drive system, it can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in a claimed 8.5 seconds. Now, that's not too fast, but it's not too slow either. Now, this is also paired up to a mild hybrid system, which should help reduce your fuel consumption just a little bit because there's a tiny lithium-ion battery on board to try and help with some coasting and smoother gear changes, where if you didn't have that, you might expect a slightly higher consumption figure on this engine here. Now, some things I really like is that you get integrated nozzles into your wipers, so it's a bit nicer when you have to clean your windshield instead of the water spraying everywhere. You get contrasting mirror caps, contrasting roof rails, you've even got these 20-inch wheels wrapped in, yes, some very excellent Michelin rubber, and the door feel feels pretty nice here. There's a solid thunk to the front and rear doors here, so the construction feels very high quality. This car also comes with 2 keys. You get an orange key and a black key. This orange key here, it looks cool, but it's also programmable, which means you can limit how high the volume goes on the speaker system here, and you can even restrict the speed limit on here if you don't trust someone you're lending your car to. Now, a very iconic Volvo feature here are the rear taillights, which is called the Thor Hammer look, which looks quite nice, and they're LEDs, and you've even got yourself some hidden tailpipes, where previous generations of XC40s had every type of exhaust exit. They've had dual single exits and even a quad exhaust looking exit. It wasn't actually a quad exhaust system, but it was meant to look like one. Now, the big advantage of getting an XC40 is it's pretty decent sized boot space for its category. Now, you get this hard shell cover here, which you can remove, and I have some bags back here, so I can take these out and it will reveal a bunch of space. I have 3 bags back here and I still have plenty of room for more. Now, this floor you see that's folded up here can be folded up for some grocery bag holders, which is very useful. And then you can store smaller items like this underneath the boot floor. But underneath that is a genuine space saver spare, which is quite useful. The rear seat room in here is pretty generous. I have a good amount of headroom, decent amounts of knee room, and plenty of feet room as a 5'11" adult. Now, if you're sitting in the middle seat, it's gonna suck because there is a relatively large transmission and exhaust tunnel, unlike the EX40. Now, we have rear heated seats here in the back of this specific XC40, which are tri-zone control, which is pretty cool. So you have 3 different ways of adjusting that, and they're only available on the outer seats. So again, it's gonna suck if you get that middle seat. Now, if you don't need to use the middle seat, there is an armrest with some cup holders here, which is pretty nice. And you have 4 coat hooks back here. Yes, 4. You have 1, 2, and another 2 on the other side, which is pretty unique. Of course, we get this glass roof, which you can close with a shade. You've also got rear air vents. You've got some nice map pockets. You have okay door bins. They're a bit small, but at least there's this carpeted material in here, which just feels a bit nicer when you're sitting in the back. But I will say the padding on these rear seats is just a little thin. It just feels a little bit rigid on my back, and I don't feel as plush as I could be compared to some other cars, which might have a bit more padding in the backrest. And then the head headrest is a little firm. And you've got very easy to access ISOFIX points back here. But overall, for a smaller SUV, this is a very generous back seat. A lot of people note that they love the inside of the XC40 because you have this commanding driving position. You have a large bonnet, but it feels like you're sitting high up, and it feels like you're in a larger SUV than you actually are. Some really nice touches in here would be the driftwood inserts, which are actually open pore and feel very high quality. All the materials feel very nicely buttoned down. You have a little ticket holder up here on the dashboard, an upgraded Harman Kardon sound system, which sounds so good, especially when you turn up that surround sound feature. It's one of the best sound stages I've used in a small SUV like this. Up top, we have a frameless rear vision mirror, which has auto dimming in it. This giant plastic nodule here is for all your Volvo safety systems. We have an SOS button as well, which is good in case of an emergency. The start-stop button looks a bit generic, and if you press that, everything comes alive. And that wakes up this vertical tablet here, which is running on Google Automotive. It's pretty much like a Google tablet because it has Google Maps integrated into it. The Bluetooth is very smart. It will bring up your contact images, which is quite useful, so you don't really have to run Apple CarPlay, but if you do, you'll have to bring a cable that it connects to the USB-C ports up front. And you've got some things like a cabin ionization feature, which filters out the outside air to inside your car, and it will tell you what the outside air quality is, which is, for most cases I've been in, has said it's been poor. That's pretty easy to operate. You've even got YouTube available here, which is crazy. You've even got some things like car status. You can go to the Google Play Store and download some apps. You have the Google Assistant on board as well, which is very useful. So you can do things like, direct me to the nearest petrol station.
Navigating to Metro Petroleum Kerman.
That sort of connectivity is really useful. But what isn't kind of useful is the fact we don't have any physical controls for the climate control. So it's all done through the touchscreen. We have a heated steering wheel, we have heated seats, but you have to adjust the fan speed and all that through the touchscreen. I love the leather wrap steering wheel. We have some simple buttons here. The digital driver's display, which is like a pill-shaped display. This thing is really easy to operate. You've got your Google Maps, which you can toggle on and off, and that's it. You can get some simple trip information, and I love the fact that it looks great, but it's not overly complicated with any weird customization features. In our glove box here, we have a small amount of storage, but what is useful is that you do have a bag hook and a pen holder. This thing can hold up to 2 kilograms, which is quite useful. Our thigh extensions are very nice. We have an inbuilt bin here, which you can take out to dispose of anything that you put in there. An okay size center cubby for the size of this car, and a 12-volt socket as well. Now, the side door bins are a bit more generous than the ones in the back, but they're still a bit on the slim side. Now, for some people, this might not be great, but to me, I love the fact that there's no drive modes in here. There's an off-road mode, but you just get in here, start the engine, and go to drive. Here are 3 good things about the driving experience. First of all, it is a very solid little platform. I love driving around this thing. It feels robust. There's no rattles, no squeaks. I feel very connected to the driving experience, even though this is a little SUV. It's obviously not a hot hatch or anything like that, but it does feel very planted on the road. That all-wheel drive system's giving me all the grip I need. And this engine, when it's working well with the gearbox, I'll come and tell you about that in a second, it's really quite smooth, and it's just an easy to operate car. I love just how it just feels so robust. It feels together, it feels solid. It just feels like a little nugget of an SUV, and that's what you want when you're buying a small luxury SUV. Number 2, I love how simple the cabin is. There is nothing excessive going on here. I have all my information in my digital driver's display. I'm not feeling like I'm missing out on any cool customization because it is just very simple. There's not much customization there at all, but if you use the Google navigation built into this car, which is great because it means you don't have to rely on your phone being connected to this car. You can simply just use inbuilt Google Maps. It will go through the center cluster here and navigate you there, so you don't have to look in the middle screen, which is great. And of course, you have easy connectivity with your phone via Bluetooth and also wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And reason number 3 I love driving this thing is the fact that it has great visibility. Thanks to this tall, upright position of the actual design of the car, you're getting plenty of view out through the front glass here, you're getting plenty of views out the side, and also thanks to that glass roof, there's more light being brought into this cabinet. As you can see here, it is a pretty sizable small SUV, so there's plenty of space for you, your passengers, and even some luggage, which is a great plus. There's not much compromise here unless you're looking for more physical space. And on top of that, I do love the fact that there's only a simple off-road mode, and I wouldn't imagine going off-road in this thing because of those larger 20-inch wheels. They look pretty easy to scratch, so it's really only have to go on some grass or any sort of dirt. Now, 2 things I don't love about the driving experience here. Number 1 would definitely be the gearbox can be a bit temperamental. It's an 8-speed automatic gearbox, so it's not a dual clutch, but for some reason it's behaving like one. So I sort of get some misgears. It sort of can lurch around a little bit at low speeds and can be a bit indecisive and can be a little bit not so reactive when you put your foot down. So I'll drive along here. We're going up to an 80 km/h zone. I'm coasting and we're about to put my foot down to go to 80 km/h. So I'm going to put my foot down and it just requires a little kick down. There's a lot of drama that comes from that engine, even though we're not accelerating that quickly because it does only have an acceleration figure of 8.5 seconds to 100. And finally, the thing I'm not really loving is the low speed behavior of these brakes. I don't know if it's the pads, the rotors or something, but there is just a lot of stickiness there, which isn't so great. On top of that, that also includes the radar cruise control, which is great for when you're driving, but when you're in a traffic jam, it is not very good. It's like you've got a learner at the wheel because there is no way to customize how reactive the radar cruise control system is, so it sort of wants to anchor the brakes on a bit more aggressively than I would like. So ultimately I prefer the quietness and smoothness of the EX40, but the XC40 is brilliant if you just need a petrol SUV. You don't want to deal with the electric drivetrain and you want a smooth and quiet and very comfortable and relatively safe small SUV. But before you drive and own this thing, you want to know how much this thing costs to service because Volvos are notorious for being very expensive to service. So a 3-year service plan, which I would recommend you buy when you're buying this brand new, would cost you $1,750, and a 5-year service plan will cost you $3,000 as a prepaid service package. Now, if you go to productreview.com.au, there you can see owners who've actually reviewed and lived with the XC40. However, there are a bunch of different generations and different engines and drivetrains this car came with. So people have had different experiences. Some people loved living with this car. Other people had some pretty lousy experiences with some mechanical failures. So I'm hoping with this 2023 update, we saw some nice improvements with the motor, and that's why we've got this particular mild hybrid 4-cylinder setup instead of the more complicated twin charge motors or a plug-in hybrid setup.